inheritance. They invest an undeniable role in shaping Gambia's future and progress. Their right to vote has been put into action. On March 4th, just to give you a brief background, the National Assembly voted to remove Clause 14 from the election bill, a clause that provided for the registration of voting of Gambians in the diaspora. This decision, made by 25 votes against 14, effectively shuts out a significant portion of our citizens from participating in elections unless they undertake costly and burdensome travel back home. Who can do those kind of things? This raises fundamental questions. Why should Gambians abroad, who contribute so much, be excluded from deciding their nation's future? How does this align with the constitutional right granted under Section 39 of the 1997 Constitution? And what does this mean for the credibility and inclusiveness of our electoral system? These are the pressing questions that civil society organizations, democracy advocates, legal-minded like Mr. Tal will unpack today. This is not just a conversation about politics. If people were politicizing, or people are politicizing this is not about politics. It is about ensuring that every Gambian, regardless of their geographical location, have a voice in shaping our democracy. On that note, I would like to invite Mr. Salih Tal. Please welcome Salih Tal to give a welcoming remarks in this very important press conference. You're welcome, Mr. Tal.
Thank you very much, MS Ba, Emeritus President of GPU, past President. Good morning, members of the press, civil society, members of civil society, and to my right, Commissioner, I always call Commissioner Yankuba, head of Election Watch. To my left, Marjang, Executive Director of Gambia Participates, and of course, most important, the lady sitting with us, Anita, Head of Programs, the dynamic Anita Mahoney of GP. It is indeed an honor for me to welcome all attendants, journalists, civil society, and citizens who are all stakeholders in this process, who took their time out to attend this press conference / briefing. I'll start by acknowledging the important role the media plays in shaping the public discourse in governance and democracy. The media is called the fourth estate because they have a very important role to play. It is not lost to Gambians of the immense role our brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers and uncles and aunties who live abroad, either to be educated or for greener pastures, the immense contribution they make to our country, not only economically, I think that is well established, socially, and also to our political trajectory. Diaspora, as it's called, for me, I call them Gambian brothers and sisters, are citizens of the Gambia. and enjoy every right as every Gambian. Your right as a Gambian does not change because of where you're located. I don't think any Gambian would live elsewhere if they have the option of living in the Gambia. So it's not a matter of choice. Many Gambians migrated for economic reasons or to seek a better education or opportunities. Those Gambians played a very critical role in ensuring the end of dictatorship. They played a very critical role in restoring democracy. Those sons and daughters of Gambia, there was a time for those of us that lived in Gambia under the dictatorship that even this media could not have this press conference. This media could not speak. It was the likes of Freedom Newspaper, Gainako, Echo, Gambia L, that amplified our voices, that spoke for us. When we were in Gambia, muzzled, we couldn't speak. The diaspora played a big role in even getting the political parties to come together, the Democratic Front. And so many put their resources, energy, intellect. Some of them risked their lives, did everything possible to end dictatorship. And Coalition 2016 arose after Solo Sending went out protesting for electoral reform. He lost his life. He gave his life. He sacrificed his life for the greater good, for Gambia to be free from dictatorship, for Gambia to have an electoral system that is fair and equitable, that will allow Gambians to be able to make informed choices as to who should lead and steer their affairs. That's what Solo Sending died for. He died to make sure we have justice, we are free, and we have an inclusive and participatory democracy. Today, 8 years after, the promise is made of ensuring that the electoral reforms required is put in place, one of which was to just ensure diasporans, that is Gambians who reside abroad, not only in America, in Senegal, in Guinea-Bissau, in Mali, or Cote d'Ivoire, are able to exercise their constitutional right, which is guaranteed by Section 39, to vote where they live and reside at that point in time, rather than flying back to Gambia or driving back to Gambia. This is already given by the law, provided by the law. This is given by, Yahya Jammeh's constitution, I'll call it that. Already, 1997 constitution, that is colloquially called the Jammeh constitution. They even provided for that possibility, that right. And also the Election Act provides for the registrations of diasporans. It mandates the IEC to compile and register diasporans living abroad. Section 141 clearly states that the IEC may make rules to ensure people in diaspora can vote in presidential elections. So there is no doubt that the law of the land, as it stands, as confirmed by the Supreme Court case of Bakari Bunja Dabo, Coach Samba Jau, and others against the IEC, the Attorney General and the IEC, the Supreme Court affirmed with clarity that all Gambians living in the Gambia, outside the Gambia, have a right to be registered and vote in all national elections, and urge the IEC to discharge their duty, their legally mandated duty to register Gambians abroad so that they can vote. In fact, in that case, the IEC considered that, yes, we know that we are legally mandated to register Gambians abroad to vote, and undertook to do it. In fact, there was subsequently a budgetary allocation for that purpose. Somehow, somewhere. And that informed the passage of the the elections bill, which is now before the National Assembly. The elections bill was subject to extensive consultative process of stakeholders, the inter-party participated, civil society participated, the Bar Association participated, the executive participated, Minister of Justice participated. So the bill before, and the Diaspora also participated. MSDG participated to make sure the bill is fit for purpose. This is the bill that was taken to the National Assembly that has been there since 2019, I believe. And now we're in 2025. How many years is that? How many years is that? 2020 rather, 2020. Yeah, at least 5 years. So there are many important provisions in that bill. As you know, the bill is now under consideration. The National Assembly is looking at it line by line, following the committee looked at it, the Human Rights and Constitutional Law Committee looked at it. And many of us were shocked to see that a very progressive provision, that is clause 14, which basically is providing for what already exists in the law, just expanding the scope, giving sort of ensuring that the IEC takes concrete steps to register diasporans without any ambiguity. I think that was the purpose, to make sure that IEC takes concrete steps to ensure that Gambians abroad are able to enjoy their rights already guaranteed by the Constitution. So it's not section 14, clause 14 in the bill is not giving diasporans the right. That right is already given by the Constitution. It's just making it operational so that they can actually actualize and be able to, vote where they live. Because the law has been provided. The legal framework was what is missing. And IEC is legally mandated to do that. And they have not done it to date. So this clause was strengthened and was subject of intense debate and discourse to ensure that it is very clear that IEC have to do it, and was very specific as to what they should do to ensure it happens with clarity. Now, removing that provision means that we are regressing. We are going, the current law itself provides for it. Now you go to National Assembly, now they are basically going pre-JAME era, basically. That is how regressive it is to remove that clause. So today, and we've heard the different explanations given as to why it was removed. Let me make it clear, and there is no legal obstacle or inconsistency with having clause 14 in the election bill. Let me make clear. There is no legal inconsistency. It is not inconsistent with the Constitution. That bill was brought in by the executive through the Minister of Justice. It was drafted and presented through the Minister of Justice. The Minister of Justice is Chief Legal Advisor of government. The Minister of Justice will not bring any bill that is not in line with the Constitution. This bill went through committee, and committee in the recommendation, left clause 14 in it. The committee had extensive consultations. If it was not in line with the Constitution, I think it would not be on the floor. It would have been picked up at all the stages. So I think we need to put to rest the notion that having clause 14 in the bill is inconsistent with the Constitution. To the contrary, deleting clause 14 is potentially unconstitutional because section 100, I think, 2 and sub C of the Constitution makes it clear that the legislative power of the National Assembly does not extend to making laws that will negate pre-existing rights of citizens or rights provided affirmed by a court of law. In this case, Section 39 says clearly that all Gambians have a right to vote, and Supreme Court has clarified the law, this provision that this means all Gambians, regardless of where you live. So as it stands, the Supreme Court being the apex court and the final court, meaning the Supreme Court's decision is final as to what the law is. There's no doubt that diasporans have a right to be registered and to vote in elections. So for National Assembly now to take out a provision that would, in effect, deprive Gambian diaspora of the right, or dilute that right, or restrict that right, that is also potentially not in line with the Constitution. So today, we are here as part of a consortium of Gambian civil society, that is Elections Watch, led by Yankuba, Gambia Participate, led by Mar Nyang, and Edward Francis Small, led by Madi Jabate, and other stakeholders who came together and did a thorough review of the issues around the deleted clause 14 and came up with a position paper to help and assist our National Assembly member revisit their decision and highlight what we believe is the correct legal position so that they can make a better informed decision and bring back the clause in line with what the majority of Gambians want. We've also developed an FAQ, frequently asked question, to summarize the issue, which we also will share in due course, to make sure that also the press, you will spread this information. So in the public discourse, the correct information is out there for the public to judge for themselves. We do not claim to have a monopoly of knowledge or wisdom. As you know, every issue can be seen with different lenses. But we do believe that our position is in line with the law, and it has been succinctly documented and referenced with the law, which you can read for yourself. And we don't decide what the law is. It's the Supreme Court. Any lawyer can have a view on what a law is, but the final arbiter, that is the final say as to what is law or constitutional, is the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has made a pronouncement on this, and a very clear pronouncement, unequivocal pronouncement as to the right of diasporans to be registered and to vote in elections. On that note, I thank you all for taking time, and other speakers will come in and explain and also contribute to the discussion, and then you can also ask questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. very important remarks. You highlighted the legal aspects and also the violation of rights by our own people, that is the National Assembly, as some of their argument hold no basis. We're hoping that they will definitely look into it, as you rightly stated. Now I would like to allow Mr. Manyam to give us the content of the position paper. Mr. Manyam, you're welcome.
Thank you, Ramesh. Yeah? I need to? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Finish it.
Yeah.
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 Use this one.
Thank you, Council Tal. Thank you, Mr. President MS Ba, my colleague Anita Mahoney, and the head of the EWC, Yankuba. I think Council Tal has already given you the background of what I'm about to read. And I will just go straight to the point and read the position paper that was co-drafted by Gambia Participate, EWC, and the Edward Francis Small Center for Rights and Justice. Position paper on the deleted clause 14 of Election Bill 2021 and its impact on diaspora voting. Introduction. The right to vote and be voted for in public elections is a constitutional right. The 1997 Constitution stipulates in Section 26 the political rights of Gambians, which includes the vote or to be voted for in elections. In Section 39 of the 1997 Constitution, the Constitution states further that every citizen who is 18 years and of sound mind has a right to register as a voter to vote in public elections. The Elections Act of 1996 aligns with these constitutional provisions. Section 11 of the Elections Act states that the IEC will register all Gambians, including maintaining and compiling a register of Gambian voters in foreign countries. Section 12 of the Elections Act provides the requirements for qualification for registration, among which is one has to be registered in the constituency in which one resides or was born. Further, Section 141 of the Election Act gives the IEC the power to make rules for Gambians in the diaspora to vote in presidential elections. The Supreme Court, in its 2021 ruling, confirmed that all Gambians, including those in the diaspora, have the right to be registered and to vote, as provided for in the Constitution and the Elections Act. These provisions of the Constitution and the Elections Act, as well as the Supreme Court ruling, clearly do not only guarantee the right to vote of all Gambians, including those in the diaspora, but also places a clear legal and political obligation on the executive, legislature, and the IEC to give effect to these provisions. Background of diaspora voting efforts. The fight for diaspora voting rights has spanned over 25 years. Key milestones include, in 2012, the main opposition parties, in this case the UDP, NRP, GMC, GDPD, NCP, and PDOIS, form an alliance advocating for electoral reforms, including diaspora voting. In 2015, a 12-point proposal was submitted to former President Jammeh, Jesse Jackson, and the United Nations demanding diaspora voting rights. In 2016, The coalition 2016, led by the current President Adam Barrow, explicitly included diaspora voting in its manifesto. Gambians abroad played a crucial role in securing victory for this coalition. In 2019, to date, the IEC, National Assembly, Ministry of Justice, political parties, civil society, and diaspora representatives engaged in multiple consultations on the election bill, agreeing that diaspora voting is a constitutional right that must be actualized. Purpose of this position paper. The purpose of this position paper on the deleted clause 14 of the election bill is to provide clarity and guidance to members of the National Assembly to reintroduce and restore clause 14 into the election bill under consideration. It seeks to provide answers to the divergent and conflicting perceptions that led to the deletion of the clause, and thereby generate enough clarity to encourage members to reintroduce the clause using the procedure provided in the standing orders of the National Assembly. Justification by parliamentarians. Many parliamentarians who voted for the deletion of clause 14 cited its incompatibility with section 39(1) of the 1997 Constitution, which states, and I quote, "Every citizen of the Gambia being 18 years or older and of sound mind shall have the right to vote for the purpose of elections of a president and members of the National Assembly, and shall be entitled to be registered as a voter in a National Assembly constituency for that purpose." Their interpretation, end quote, their interpretation of this section, especially the language "shall be entitled to be registered as a voter in a National Assembly constituency," means that a new constituency for the diaspora must be created, which will require amendment of section 88 of the 1997 Constitution to increase the number of National Assembly constituencies. This was the position of many parliamentarians that voted against clause 14. Our position on section 39 of the 1997 Constitution. Our position is, section 39(1) of the 1997 Constitution confers the right to vote to all citizens of age and sound mind and the registration of eligible Gambians under a National Assembly constituency to be able to exercise their suffrage regardless of their residency. The Supreme Court of the Gambia, in the case of Bakari Bunja Dabo and others versus the Attorney General and Independent Electoral Commission in 2021, interpreted section 39 as follows, and I quote, "Pursuant to section 39 of the Constitution, every Gambian, including those residing outside the jurisdiction, is entitled to be registered and to vote in the election to the offices of President, members of the National Assembly, for local government offices and traditional rulers, as well as referenda." End quote. This interpretation by the Supreme Court leaves no ambiguity for the registration and voting rights of Gambians residing outside the Gambia in public elections. To be registered, in quote, in a National Assembly constituency means the established constituencies created by the IEC, which according to the 2015 Constitutional Amendment are 53. IEC, while conducting its voter registration exercise, should register eligible voters wherever they may be residing under the existing National Assembly constituency. Section 11 of the Elections Act of 1996 further provides for the IEC to prepare and maintain a register of voters for each constituency and a register of Gambian registered voters in foreign countries. The qualification to be registered as a voter is set out in Section 12 of the Elections Act. Specifically, Section 12C provides that a person should be registered in the constitution one resides or where one was born. In addition, Section 141 of the Elections Act states that, and I quote, "The Commission may make rules for Gambians in any foreign country to vote in a presidential election," end quote. It is worth noting that this Section 141 in the Election Act is what has been transformed into Clause 14 in the Elections Bill 2021. Both provide for the IEC to register and make rules for Gambians in the diaspora to vote in public elections in the Gambia. In light of the foregoing, it is our humble view that the current legal framework provides for the registration and voting of Gambians residing abroad to vote in public elections. Clause 14 of the election bill is not incompatible with Section 39 of the 1997 Constitution. Clause 14.1 of the election bill is consistent with Section 26 and 39 of the 1997 Constitution and the Supreme Court 2021 ruling on Bakary Bunja Dabo versus AG and the Independent Electoral Commission, all of which extend voting rights to every Gambian, every citizen of the Gambia at home and at abroad. In addition, Clause 14 provides for the further legal guidelines for the IEC to formulate rules in facilitating the registration and voting of Gambians living outside the Gambia. Why Clause 14 should be reinstated? 1. Clause 14 aligns with the 1997 Constitution and the 2021 Supreme Court ruling. Clause 14 does not contradict Section 39. Rather, it provides legal guidelines for the IEC to register diaspora voters under existing constituencies, ensuring their participation without requiring new ones. 2. Deleting Clause 14 violates constitutional rights. By removing this clause, the National Assembly directly violates Section 39 of the 1997 Constitution, which guarantees voting rights to all citizens of the Gambia that are eligible to vote. The IEC is prevented from fulfilling its constitutional and legal obligations. Gambians abroad who contribute significantly to national development are unjustly disenfranchised. This creates a dangerous precedent where any Gambian who moves abroad automatically loses their voting rights. Number 3, diaspora voting is logistically and legally feasible. Best practices globally and regionally demonstrate that diaspora voting is possible without requiring separate constituencies. Gambians abroad can be registered under their birth constituencies or former places of residence, as permitted by Section 12 of the Elections Act. Deletion of Clause 14 contradicts the principle of democracy and good governance. Excluding diaspora voters undermines democratic participation, human rights principles, and the rule of law as affirmed by the Supreme Court of the Gambia. Our call to action to members of the Parliament. Number 1 is to reintroduce Clause 14 with minor adjustments. Substitute the word shall with may in Clause 14.2 of the Elections Bill. To ensure IEC discretion in consulting with Cabinet and the Inter-Party Committee, which must not be a legal obligation upon the election management body. 2. Maintain presidential election and referenda. Keep within bounds diaspora voting to presidential election and referenda for now, removing ambiguous wording such as, and I quote, or any other elections as determined by the Constitution or any other law from Clause 14.2. This will at least remove any ambiguity and accommodate diaspora to vote in subsequent presidential elections and referendums until such time when the necessary legal framework to facilitate the diaspora to vote in local and constituency elections are established. Uphold constitutional and democratic obligations. We remind National Assembly of their duty under Section 17.1 of the Constitution, which mandates respect for fundamental human rights by all branches of government, including the legislature. 4. Act before the 2026 presidential election. Failure to reinstate Clause 14 with amendment will perpetuate an unconstitutional system that denies Gambians abroad their rights, set a regressive precedent for future electoral laws. Conclusion. The removal of Clause 14 from the Election Bill 2021 is a direct infringement on the constitutional rights of Gambians living abroad and total disregard to the disregard of the verdict of the Supreme Court of the Gambia. It effectively disenfranchises almost 250,000 of Gambians abroad who have long fought for the right to participate in national elections and continue to contribute immensely on the country's economy. We urge the immediate reintroduction of Clause 14 with minor amendments to ensure Gambians abroad can vote in the 2026 presidential election and future referenda. The time to act is now to safeguard democracy, uphold constitutional rights, and respect the sacrifices of Gambians worldwide. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Mark, I think the position paper is very clear and equivocally stated by Mark Young. Additionally, looking at the Gambia or our immediate neighbors, we are the only country without diaspora voting, because if you look at Guinea-Conakry, people who live in Guinea-Conakry, Bissau, and the irony is, you know, we are older than Guinea-Bissau for eight years. Like, Guinea-Bissau got their independence in 1973, Gambia 1965. You know, and looking at our democratic gains, we are at least, you know, far ahead of Guinea-Bissau. So why not we have diaspora voting Senegal, you know, and then Guinea-Conakry. So I think Gambia should not definitely be left behind. Thank you for that comprehensive deliberation. Now to Mr. Manjang. Okay, questions first. So now we will allow questions from journalists. Yeah, please, probably we will have first set of questions, then we have another set. Maybe we will allow maybe 3 or 4 people to ask first, then we have another batch of questions. You raise your hand and then tell us your name and the question, please.
Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Denki Ture from the Point newspaper. My question goes to Mr. Tal. Mr. Tal, as a legally minded person, what is your take on members standing on the ground that the contradiction arises primarily from the interpretation of Section 88 of the 1997 Constitution, which requires voters to be registered in their constituency of residence, which they say effectively exclude the diaspora?
All right, thank you. Maybe Mr. Tal will take note. Mr. Tal, take note. Can we have another one, please? Any other one? Okay, then we allow Mr. Tal. Okay, Edward Francis,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Edward Francis Dale from Aston. Yeah, in the position paper, it is highlighted that the National Assembly members should use their standing order to reintroduce the clause. But the standing order is not mentioned. So can you answer?
Okay, mentioning the standing order. Okay.
Section 88 says. Section 88 is the assembly. Section 88, the executive constituencies.
That's the school that they are not registered. That they are not registered in Section 88. It's a justification of national assemblies.
So maybe I will first
Maria,
jump
you
into
go ahead,
and
yeah,
answer the
yeah.
question from the Askanwi. So I believe it's Standing Order 74, right? At consideration stage, the National Assembly, after debating a particular clause, right, which they either amend or delete, they could actually raise the motion under that particular standing order to bring back that clause, right? This was also something that was done with the anti-corruption bill. If you could remember, there was a particular clause where the Anti-Corruption Commission was mandated to seek the mandate or the approval of the Attorney General before proceeding with legal prosecution of those that are found wanting of corruption. And the minority leader of the National Assembly raised that motion under that section, Standing Order 74, to bring back that clause. So it was brought back. That was the reason why the anti-corruption bill was also deferred from September to December, because the time was not sufficient for them to debate it. So it was done, and they reviewed it, but still Parliament maintained their position. So they could actually do the same thing with this coalition. Not that the fact that it's deleted, they cannot bring it back. It's actually possible, and it's in line with the parliamentary procedures.
All right. Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Khan.
Yes, so can you repeat the question again?
I say, what is your take on National Assembly members, or some I would say, standing on the ground on Section 88, which they believe exclude the diaspora, since they are not registered on the National Assembly as a consequence?
Yeah, so the consequences.
Yes, so I think our position is that the diaspora does not need to be registered as a separate constituency, because if you look at the qualification, it looks at where you were born. So every Gambian is born in the constituency, or where you reside.
Yeah.
So if you are born, let's say, I from Jeb Senegal, Banjul, I register in Banjul North, and I travel to England, right? I mean, for the purpose of registration, IEC will register me as somebody, as a constituent of Banjul North. That would deal with that issue. So I don't think it's a real problem. I think it's a problem that can be easily dealt with by just registering everybody in either because you don't reside in the Gambia, so your qualification will not be tied to your residency, but to your birth. Where were you born? You were born in, every Gambian is either born in a constituency or reside in a constituency. And in the case of those outside, you will look at where they were born, where they're registered. So you register them where they were born. I think that in simple terms will solve the problem.
And I think, in addition to that, the confusion here is Section 88 is talking about the composition of constituency in the National Assembly. It says that the National Assembly shall comprise of 53, it used to be 48 until it was amended in 2015 to 53
at least
constituencies, right? So it is talking about the National Assembly. Yes, IEC register voters under the existing constituencies as well. However, we need to also understand that presidential election, the country is treated as one constituency. We all vote towards the national office, that is the office of the president. The same thing with referendum. If we want a diaspora constituency where we will have the diaspora representing the diasporians, then the amendment of Section 88 will be required.
Yes.
To create a diaspora constituency to represent them.
Yes.
And that will mean for right now, what is possible is diaspora can vote in presidential elections under our existing electoral and constitution framework. They can vote in presidential election and referendum. Where they cannot vote right now is parliamentary election, councillorship election, and mayoral election, because that would require demarcating a constituency for the diaspora. So 2026, the diaspora should be able to vote. Now, removing it, as Council Star stated, they are going to make the matter worse than the current existing Gambia constitution that he mentioned, which accommodates diaspora. So it is to make it better, but not to make it worse.
Thank you. I think it's very clear.
Is it clear to you?
Yeah, it's very clear, obviously, that the diaspora can vote. There is no controversy over it. Yes. Anyone?
Well, I guess I just would like to know, for example, what next? Because we know that on the 25th is when parliamentarians will probably be looking at the elections bill. Is there any other way that you are going to be able to engage these parliamentarians so that they do the needful come next? Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Yusuf Taylor for Assembly Media.
So the next step is to disseminate this, engage parliamentarians virtually. That's what we can do right now, because they're already in session. We cannot convene them and have a conversation on this, but we're going to be sending this to parliamentarians. Obviously, we're also going to put it on our websites, share the link with them, but at the same time as well, we will have the FAQ ready right, for parliamentarians as well.
Yeah, I would also like to add to that. I think, as you rightly said, on the 25th they will resume consideration of the bill. I think they are now in clause 18, yes. So they've gone past 14. I think it will take a series of sessions to really finalize this bill. So there's still a window within which Parliament have the power and right understanding order to bring it back. So I think our advocacy is ongoing. So we will, of course, send these documents to the parliamentarians. And further, we recognize that the Parliament, have the power to make laws, and we're not in any way challenging the power to make laws. But they must also make laws in line with the limits set by the Constitution. And also, they must make laws which we believe is in the interest of the population. And in a democracy, we don't always agree. So we think that our advocacy is to help to assist parliamentarians to make a better informed decision about this clause. We think that from our initial consultation and from what we've seen in the media, some of them have spoken to the media, the explanations they've given as to why they deleted this clause, I think is based on a misunderstanding of the legal position. Because some of them said very clearly, some of the very vocal ones said very clearly that they don't want to make a law that's against the Constitution. So we want to help bring them back and say, well, in fact, deleting this clause may actually contradict the Constitution.
Against it.
And it is by actually reinstating this clause, you are acting in line with the Constitution, because already this clause in a different form exists in the current law, and it's the same Constitution. So there cannot be any constitutional problem. In terms of the Section 88, as Mara said, that will only be applicable for amendment in the case you're talking about diaspora running for office or they want to vote in parliamentary. So for now, what is possible without any legal question or doubt is being able to vote in presidential and referendum. And that message. So we can look at it on an incremental basis. If diaspora cannot have everything, at least for now, give them what they already have. It's there already. It's theirs and constitutionally provided for and mandated. So you cannot take a step that will now take away what they have. So I think that's what we want, and we think, we think our NAMs, any right-thinking National Assembly with respect, once they really fully understand these issues, I think those who vote against I presume, would rethink their position and then also support the reinsertion of clause 14.
And that's why we also, in our position paper, stating that the Parliament should reconsider amending clause 14.2, especially the phrase which says, or any other elections as determined by the Constitution or any other law. Because that will also mean the rest of all the elections. But for now, if they're able to remove that, then they will be consistent with all the legal frameworks that allow diaspora to vote in elections, especially, more specifically, the presidential and referendum, right? So that is what is possible for now.
Thank you. I think.
So my name is Nelson.
Right.
I am from Korea. I think the National Assembly members, some of them don't have the legal understanding. But if it is with amendments, I think they should accept it. But some of them talks about the logistics. They said that it will be difficult for Gambia to provide like filling stations in all other countries where Gambians are. So for example, if you have one in Europe, another have to travel from other states to go and vote in the other states, they think that is not going to be fair. So that means almost in every state where Gambians are, they will need a polling station in order to go and vote. That is what they say. Yeah. So I don't know what we have to say with that.
I said this yesterday, election itself is a logistical nightmare. Anywhere you go. In Nigeria, they have a voter population of how much? Is it 98 million people? And we've observed election in that country. It is a logistical nightmare, but it is a constitutional mandate. That's why election management bodies are established to hire competent officials to find solutions to those logistical nightmares. Right? The OIC was a logistical nightmare, but we were able to achieve that. And it was just a 2-day event. Election is just a 1-day event, as in, though there are preparation that is being done, but the election itself is done in a day, though it requires a lot of work. So the logistical nightmare that the government was able to overcome to host the OIC, they could actually even do better. So to say it is a logistical nightmare and not doing it means you are going against the principles that are outlined in the 1997 Constitution to exercise universal adult suffrage. So there is no excuse. We might talk about other legal issues, but to say it's a logistical nightmare, I think that is a very, very, not good excuse that they should bring about.
Yeah, I would just like to chime in. Matt is I'm not an election expert. I can talk about the law. So Matt, I defer to Matt on matters of logistics and practical election. But I just, as a citizen, I'm speaking as a citizen, as a lawyer now. I was really, when I was listening to Professor Jibril Fal of MSDG, they've done tremendous work for many years, looking at these issues and challenges. And I think he was in a program on QTV, and he said something that really struck my mind. He reminded us, he went down memory lane history. It's very important to go back to memory lane. In the Gambia, in the past, only those in the Congo St. Mary's could vote. So Gambia, as far as the British were concerned, is boundary of Congo St. Mary's. All the Gambians don't have the right to vote. And what was the excuse? It was a logistical nightmare. So for that reason, Gambians outside couldn't vote. But the founders of this nation, some of them fought to ensure that every Gambian in every corner of this country is able to vote, no matter how difficult it is, how challenging it is. For me, I don't even call it a name, I call it a challenge. I mean, Gambia, we have addressed way more difficult challenges than diaspora voting. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Are we the only country in the world, or in this region, that is doing this? We can benchmark ourselves with other countries. How did Senegal do it? How is Guinea-Bissau doing it? How are other countries doing it? And have we seen any position paper from IEC saying that we've done a study of the challenges of diaspora voting, and these are our constraints? Have anybody seen anything like that? No. Has there been any concrete steps taken to look at the problem and see whether there's a solution? Have they reached out to others to support them in case they cannot solve it? So in my opinion, that is just not an acceptable reason to deprive Gambians of their constitutionally mandated rights. Really.
Yeah.
And going back to section, that clause 14, actually, if you read it, it did also talk about hiring election officials in these areas where IEC is actually going to be conducting election for the diaspora to vote, right? That same clause 14 did talk about that. And IEC is actually going to be drafting rules and regulation and procedures as to how to go about this, and they could do this study by referencing to other countries that have already done, like Sal said, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So logistical nightmare is just an excuse, but it's not something that is consumable.
Even in the Gambia, you see villages, people traveling from a village to another village to vote. It's not that every village should have a polling station. They can devise a mechanism, in the diaspora, in Senegal and other places, so that they can access those polling stations. So I don't think the argument that is a logistical nightmare should be the case.
There's something else that is related on the Mr. Taylor here for us, on the elections bill, which I'm sure Gambia Participates is very interested in, the attestation matter. We've seen that National Assembly members have decided to go ahead to maintain, that attestation process, which has always been a contentious issue. Election Watch, I'm sure you're also interested in this. What's your position on this? Especially given that you yourself, your Gambia Participates and partners went to court with regards to this attestation matter. Yes.
Commissioner.
Thank you. I am Yakuba Manjan, coordinator EWC. On the issue of the attestation, but before coming to the attestation, let me first possibly say a little bit on the diaspora voting. Being a logistical nightmare, if we have Badibunkas in the hall here, going to Badibu to vote is already a nightmare. How do they get the ballot drums to Badibu? Yeah. Knowing fully well that young people protested at some point when the ferry was not going. Yeah. So how did they manage to get the ballot drums to Badibu for them to vote? That's already a nightmare. So getting into extending it to diaspora to vote is about strategizing, just like you strategize to get it from Kanifing all the way to Badibu or get it to Kiang. Not those on the road, but Kiang West, if you've been there, you know how that place is like. But we managed to have everybody participating in and voting in the electoral process. But also, elections don't come cheap. That we need to understand as a country. For us to exercise our franchise, that's the right to vote, it doesn't come cheap anywhere. We'll have to provide the resources. If it is not available, the IEC and the Assembly is supposed to look around means of raising those resources to making sure people definitely exercise that right to vote. It is one that we should all hold dearest to our heart. On the issue of the attestation, I would say it's when the issue came up, we just had a small reflection around it, yet to develop a second position paper to that effect. But I think this is like knowing the way the Assembly operates or following on some of the other contentious bills. This was some sort of a series that they were playing. Let's do some sort of a distraction mechanism. Diaspora will get their attention, but one area that was very contentious is the use of attestation. This was not only challenged before the election day. During the process, Gambia Participates, Activista, and some other youth groups went to court to challenge it. The EWC observed the process, and we've seen minors registering in high numbers, alleged non-Gambians registering in high numbers, and we've seen the disparity from the presidential elections to the parliamentary. And even on election day, when some opposition groups came together to say the election was not free and fair because foreigners were registering to, foreigners were voting on the day. So having the attestation been issued by alcalos, we know a lot of the alcalos in most of the communities are, let me say all the alcalos are appointed through a process which is political. From the alcalos issuing attestation to the chiefs issuing attestation, which are also the same line political. So how do we make that process very, very transparent? It's just going by the ID card, the passport, that we know there are controls and checks. But with the use of attestation is one that I am sure we'll have a broader reflection on, as we have done with the diaspora voting. We'll provide another position paper on, and we'll do another follow-up engagement to making sure that if we want possibly at least a sanitized election process with a credible voter list that we'll all be very satisfied with, the issue of attestation should be a thing of the past. If I can just give an example of the elections watch observing in one of our observation days, this is in the town, at Old Johnson Primary School. Every individual that registered from 8 a.m. all the way to 4 p.m. uses attestation. Yeah. And this was flat. You cannot tell me just one closest to Banjul, another very closest to Kanifing, IEC, the immigration center. Yeah. No individual has an ID card or a birth certificate or a birth certificate. Just one has a health center that issues birth certificate. So the mind cannot take it that you can tell me people in that community where I am from, ironically, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., all the people that registered, no individual has these three documents. Everybody issued with an alcalde attestation. How do we explain that? There is something fundamentally not right. So to get that right, I think the issue of attestation should be another one that we should be making noise about. We should come up with position paper, and definitely it's something that we should look at before the next electoral cycle. No, you want to say something?
Yes, I think Yankuba have already talked about that. We have advanced as a country, right? We've become more civilized, And we have incorporated new digital registration, especially birth registration system in our country. Not long ago, was it a year or two, the Minister of Health was rolling a new birth register system, right, which is very advanced. So
Electronic.
and also electronic. They went every part of this country to register people, and still the registration, I believe, is ongoing. If you have a child, if you lost your birth certificate, there are procedures in attaining your birth certificate, which is a very standard and good practice. And it requires you to present certain documents. For example, a document of your a parent or so that shows that you are a Gambian. The attestation doesn't do that. It's look. We also need to understand when this issue of attestation was also being drawn, the history of it. 1996 or prior, right? Development and economic activities were organized in the Gambia. Right? Those in the protectorate or rural communities were marginalized, not having access to these issues. So it was reasonable at the time for those in the rural communities where the settlements were very small, and Alcalos, as custodian of the land, knows every single family because the population in those communities were very small. They know whoever is coming to a village, they go to the Alcalo, greet, and Alcalo asks them what is their origin, blah, blah, blah. And if you also want to know the history of a village and families, Alcalos will tell you, they're more like custodian of the tradition, not only lands, but also maintaining family ties. They know who is who. Right now, it is practically impossible for the Alcalo to know every single individual in the village and to attest that that person was born and raised or was born in that particular settlement. It's not possible. So I think parliamentarians should do away with the attestation. The birth registrar is still ongoing. If you don't have a birth certificate, it has to be mandatory. In fact, in our rule, in our 2021 case, that's what the judge said. It was in fact a criminal act for those in Banjul and Janjanbureh not to be registered, not to have a birth certificate. It was a criminal act. I believe it was a 1950 act. So right now, if you don't have a birth certificate, go to the center closer to you and then register for it. Today, when the government have signed this deal with Spain and UAE, everyone is rushing for a passport because that's a requirement before you can travel.
More than 10,000 Gambians.
So why not for a birth certificate in order to be registered in the world? I think if you want to have a...
Yeah, for the microphone.
To say thank you.
I know you don't like taking center, but today you will take center.
Okay. Good afternoon once again. This time around, I'm giving a very simple task. That is to thank you for coming. Just to say thank you. But as we go on, like Uncle Sal said, the media is the fourth estate. We count on your continuous support in disseminating this information to the whole Gambian public. The journey of building a better Gambia does not only stop with the activists, does not only stop with the CSO organizations. The media play a bigger role in disseminating the information and making sure that the hard to reach and even those that are not within the confines of these organizations all get that information. We appreciate your participation in this press conference. The call was very late. Under 24 hours, all of you are able to respond to the call. That shows how much interest you have in the process. And we thank you sincerely for honoring this call. We will do another call. We'll keep engaging all of you. And we believe and we hope that this process will be more engaging, and we'll try as much as possible to not only engage with the National Assembly members, but as well the communities, which you have a good audience and a good coverage of. Is building the future of the Gambia. This is beyond the assembly members that are sitting in the assembly. The 53, 58 of them that are in that assembly is beyond them. They are representing us in that place. So it's important they do things that reflects our wishes and our aspirations of the Gambia that we want. And to get a broader public engagement on is through the media houses. And today that you are here, we believe you'll continue carrying that message across. And from the Gambia Participates, the Edward Francis Small Center for Rights and Justice, and as well the Elections Watch Committee, which is a consortium of 7 youth organizations being hosted by Peace Ambassadors, the Gambia, Activista, National Youth Parliament, Think Young Women, Be Kanyang, and as well the Gambia Federation of Disabled, forming that consortium, looking towards promoting the integrity of the electoral processes. We appreciate your coming, and we want to say thank you, and that's what I am tasked to do, to thank you for coming.
Thank you.